You guys keep wanting me to watch this. This is on Scrub Quotes. You guys keep linking this. Let me watch it.
Easily understandable universal mechanics, including the abolishment of motion inputs. Motion inputs are an ancient relic of fighting games, and they're just simply not needed for any balancing reason at all.
Not true. That already... You lost me. That's not true at all. If you understand fighting games to a somewhat acceptable level, you know that's not true. That's not just because of fireballs, but it's because of all kinds of motion inputs, right? There's a reason that people do it that way.
You would not argue for this in any other genre. I'm not even going to pretend that there's a reasonable argument for motion inputs as a base core design.
There's plenty of complex, mechanically difficult things that can exist in other genres, whether they have emotion or not, right? Like if you think about any other kind of game, there's very few games where execution is not a requirement in any sense of the word. The thing is, for me, is I don't even hate games that have special moves like this, right? Like I don't mind Power Rangers, and I liked Rising Thunder when I played it, but you have to be careful with your design around special moves like that, because the kinds of things your special move can do are different when you have one button special moves. If I have a one button walking invincible special move, suddenly the move is just so drastically powerful on one button that anything else in the game has to be designed around it. Think about Honda's headbutt. You can't have Honda's headbutt in the game. It's just a useless move. Like, you just uppercut it every time. You can't use it as, like, a move at all. Like, there's plenty of moves like that that you're just like, okay.
Motion inputs are not good design. They are not the future of fighting games. Clip this, quote this, do whatever you want with this. I promise you, 20 years from now, we will not be talking about motion inputs because they will be gone.
I mean, I think you can make fighting games around non-motion inputs. I don't think that's wrong. You just have to design the game differently. Saying like there's no design choice that justifies motion inputs. There's a reason that motion inputs exist. In particular, there's a reason there's inputs like SPD, right? And charge motion inputs exist for extremely powerful fireballs or flash kicks, or even DP inputs exist for powerful invincible anti-airs. For instance, if in games like where there's no motions, right, super inputs generally tend to be like the button plus something else. In a game like that, you cannot have a super that is fast, full screen, fully invincible, etc., etc. You know what I mean? You have to change how supers are designed if the input is incredibly simple. Yeah, so like Injustice, right? In Injustice, to do Superman super, it's just two buttons. You hit two buttons, no input, boom, it goes. He had a 2-frame, full-screen, overhead super. When super was available, there was nothing you could do. The game just stopped. You couldn't do anything about it. And that's what ends up happening at a high level. A lot of the time, the game will boil down because of designs like that. So you could remove motion commands from games, but you have to change how the moves work because of it. Yeah, and again, motion commands are not what stops people from being good at fighting games. Like, it's not the issue. Learning motions does not make you an incredible fighting game player, right? Like, if you and I play a fighting game and I'm an experienced fighting game player and you're new and all the special moves are on one button, it doesn't mean you're going to win. In fact, it probably means that I'll make even less mistakes and you have even less chance to win. I agree in the sense that there's nothing wrong with making games that don't have motion commands in them. But to say that the design doesn't change or anything is wrong, right? The design has to change. The premise could be fine if he came at this in a different angle. He's too attackative and he's on the wrong track, I think. This is his reply. For those curious, clip was taken from a video of mine about player retentions and solutions to that problem. A problem the genre has been facing since online was an option. Motion inputs are just one way to balance characters. It just happens to be the worst possible way to do so. He may not like the way it works, but that's how it be do with laughing. Dropping the big raid. Thanks very much. We're talking about someone who hates motion commands and thinks that they should be abolished. You know, just normal stuff. Granblue is a great example of that because the simple commands in Granblue are very powerful. In fact, they're so much more powerful that most people at the highest level use them all the time to reaction anti-air, to reaction projectile invincible moves, to do reaction supers, to like it cuts down the timing of you inputting commands. That's just how it works. And also, the thing about new players is having motion commands or having non-motion commands does not give new players a better or worse chance at learning or doing something, right? In fact, part of the appeal for fighting games and most games is that there is stuff to learn and enjoy about them. And, you know, if a player doesn't have to learn any motions, that's great, right? They don't have to spend time doing that. But if they go and play a strong player, it's not like suddenly they have a better chance because there's no motion commands. The strong player probably has even more of an advantage when there's no motions. The other thing is, no matter how you change inputs or commands, even if you make the game simple to execute and stuff, players will make mistakes in matches. It's just the nature of how that works. That's another one that's interesting. Yeah, so People always say stuff like links are bad for players. You should just give gatlings because gatlings are easy to execute, right? But then you see players that are like, I cannot do ABC, ABC really fast together. I think links are way easier. It's just different for each person, right? Brutus says, I can't do ABC really fast together. It feels mad awkward. I think a lot of people feel that way. Motion inputs are fun to do, so we shouldn't take them out. Even if they weren't fun to do, right? Which they are fun to do, right? But even if they are not fun to do, you know, by nature of having motion commands, you need to change the way the moves work. It's just something to think about. Now, if you don't like balancing that way, sure. I understand maybe if you don't like it. On this topic, here's Info's tweets about it. I see. Interesting thought. When KI introduced combo assist, one button special move cancels. Combo assist only works when you're in a combo. And combo assist by nature generally doesn't give you any benefits in doing combos. The only benefit that combo assist gives you is a specific like option select that players still don't do. I don't know why, but they intentionally did not let you do one button specials in neutral or it would have wrecked the game, right? Same kind of idea as Granblue. Granblue has one button specials and motion commands. When you choose between which one you do, very rarely are you doing the real input unless it's something simple, right? You do the one button input, especially in reaction scenarios because it takes much less time. The Korea Gaming video about this is a great example. Think about the difference between if someone jumps at you and your character has two anti-air options. One is crouching heavy punch and one is DP. One is much easier to do. If it's a DP, you have a much higher chance to miss the input. Even if they both work 100% of the time, crouching heavy punch is much easier to execute on an anti-air reaction than a DP. It says, can you make a game with pure one button specials? The answer is yes, because there are some, but they have very strong and clear implications on game design, right? The minute you have one button specials, the kinds of specials that can exist in the game are dramatically different because suddenly throwing a fireball is bad because you can just react with a one button move that goes through fireballs all the time. Suddenly the way projectiles work in the game has to be different. The other thing is, of course, there's a limit to this. Going too far in a complicated way is also bad. But having inputs, you know, changes the way you can make the game, right? Imagine Rashid V-Skill having no input. Oh, wait, look. It's pretty good. Having inputs makes you leave block to do these commands, right? It has a layer of dexterity and execution, which is important and people can miss under pressure, and increases the mental stack. When your mental stack is just, I hit one button, special move, and it just does this thing, it's a lot less to think about than I have to input this specific command. And that really only comes up once the player is more experienced anyway. It's not going to happen with players who are new. Option selects can definitely exist in games with one button inputs. In fact, a lot of option selects can be very powerful. Dude, option selects with one button moves, bruh, they're so good. That's the danger in having a motion command like that, right? Is like you can OS stuff really easily. I mean, execution is important for a lot of reasons, right? You don't want execution to be overbearing and for it to be a mountain, but you also want execution to exist, right? So that there is barriers besides just, you know, reaction prediction. Like you need there to be multiple aspects of a fighting game to make it interesting for the players. Think about people who don't play fighting games anymore, but they did when they were younger or something, right? They're like, bro, back in the day, I played Street Fighter 2 all the time with Zonjeff and JD. Like, bro, those characters are sick. Those games were hard as fuck to execute. In fact, inputting something in those games is so much harder than modern games. And people played them back then, right? And they enjoyed it. People love those games. The reason it's important to have multiple barriers is about the way a game works is you don't want the game to end up solved. When it comes to playing any game, fighting games are included in this, the game needs to have things on the player's mind. Lots of variables and options that make the game fast and interesting and has a lot of choice for the players. If a game doesn't have an execution barrier, if the game doesn't have a lot of choices you have to be making, it's very slow paced, so you have lots of time to think and make the correct choice, the game becomes solved very quickly. They're figured out. The correct answer is easy to see. By having the game be faster paced or having lots of options available to you or having execution be something you have to think about, by increasing those things, the game can become interesting because you have lots of choices to make. There's lots of situations you find yourself in where snap decision making is important. The slower the game is and the less choices the player has to make, the less impact the player has on it, the less variance the game has, right? It just becomes you do this one thing every time, it always works, you always win, that's it. If the game is like wide in terms of how many decisions you can make, there's lots of interesting things to sink your teeth into. It rewards expertise, it rewards awareness, it rewards understanding of the game, it rewards understanding of your character. Those are things you get rewarded for. When the game is shallow and the amount of available options is like very small, there's not a lot of decision making to be made. Character has a 30 frame dash and a 50 frame jump. I'm checking the dash or I'm anti-airing the jump. I don't have to make a lot of decisions. Characters are slow, they don't have a lot of options. I know exactly what to expect. I'm chilling. when players check dashes and anti-air jumps and react to movement and stop people from moving in, you want it to not be because it's easy, but because it's hard and players are experienced and familiar and talented enough to do it. Anyway, yeah, I'm not gonna flame this guy too hard. I didn't watch the whole video, but on that topic, I don't agree from the little bit I saw.
Listen.
And I tweeted something like, LMAO, damn, I can't believe over 50% of the players use Wi-Fi. I didn't say like, wow, I hate Wi-Fi players. I didn't tweet the truth, and boy, people were pissed. How dare you? My router is 4 houses down in another area code in a different state. If you legitimately would love to run a cable, but there's stuff blocking you from doing it, I totally understand. That being said, I'm allowed to call you a Wi-Fi playing bitch. Look, that's from the heart, all right?